Hi everyone, it's Simon from Higher Plane Games with a review for The Quiet Man, a FMV movie with 3D integrated brawling sections for PS4, PC and Xbox One, I believe, as well. This game is interesting because the reason why I say it's an FMV movie and not an adventure is because all of the full motion video scenes are not interactive. It's a linear story, it's a linear journey. Once you've played it once, you'll have understood exactly what's going on, and that's all that you need to see. So in terms of it actually being an adventure where you choose your own paths or have interaction, there is none of that. You are simply watching what's going on in front of you. The main stick of The Quiet Man is that The Quiet Man is deaf, your main character, and so the entire experience of The Quiet Man is in nigh-on silence. What I really do like about it is that it treats it as like a deaf man's experience. So where you've got like a phone ringing, or where you like thump the table, or you're hitting other people, or you're being thrown up against something, you'll kind of hear the rattling, but it's muffled and like it's coming from inside you, inside the bones. And I really like the sound design of that. Where The Quiet Man falls down is where it starts to become silence for artistic sake. And this is because the main protagonist can lip read, and he's having direct conversations with lots of the members of the story, of the different characters. But because we aren't privy to what the actual conversation and the context of the story is going on, we can't get heavily invested as it as a character because we are even one further step removed, looking from the outside in. Maybe that's the point that The Quiet Man is trying to make, but when you're trying to do that as an actual gaming and interactive and immersive experience, you couldn't turn a player off faster if you tried, because you're trying to lip read what's going on in the conversation, but then the camera may cut away from the mouth. So then you're like, well, now I've got no absolute clue as to what's going on. And so it just amounts that chapter after chapter of The Quiet Man just adds a layer of confusion and another layer of confusion. And then you've just got confusion sandwich going on. And it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So as a gaming experience, it completely and utterly fails on that section. When it then comes to the 3D Brawler sections, oh my god. So it will drop you from the FMV into a gaming world, essentially, where you take over from an actual polygon character. And although it's obviously a step down because it's not like real world life, I actually quite like the way how the graphics are done. What I don't like, though, is that the camera is positioned quite often in one direction in these very small and very self-contained environments. So if you try and run off either side to try and beat up people, the camera won't go with you. So quite often you'll have to try and drag yourself back in again so that you can actually see what on earth is going on. It's quite clear that the game has decided that it wants cinematics camera shots in very specific places. And if you aren't going to adhere to that, which unfortunately sometimes the AI don't either, then you're stuck. The other problem is that the controls are so floaty and quite unresponsive, because the whole thing kind of takes a little while for a punch to happen or a kick to happen. It reminds me of, there's a fantastic PS2 game called Jet Li Rise to Honor, where it was all about button punching almost rhythmically to try and create this ballad as you was bouncing and flipping around and doing stuff and beating up various different people at the same time. And this is trying to do that, but it comes off more like the bouncer instead, where the controls are so floaty and everything's so overblown. Because your characters have massive reach and they're busy throwing themselves around and the environments are too small, you're actually throwing people through walls, but the walls don't like necessarily smash. Characters drop in and out through each other. Collision detection is all over the shot, and when you're playing off with these finishing moves, sometimes you aren't actually in the right position for the finish move, but it will decide to trigger it anyway. And what it will do is it will kind of freeze the game a little bit, and then kind of like float your characters into the position that they were supposed to be in for the finisher to then work. And it for something that's trying to be so cinematic, it completely takes you out of the cinematic experience altogether. And it's actually quite funny to watch, but infuriating to play. On top of that, there clearly seems to be some kind of combo mechanic that then builds you up to being able to do finishers. And those finishers are things like being able to use parts of the environment, but it's never, ever, ever explained anywhere how that's worked. You get a tutorial, which is where they put up a neon controller where it tells you what each button press does in a image, but there's like no, and if you do this a few times, this is how this works, and then you need to do this, and if you do this next to, say, a TV, you might be able to put a head through it. Some of these combos I've never actually been able to do because I'm just button mashing square and triangle for kick and punch, and X to duck occasionally just to get through stuff, and that sadly also seems to be just fine to get you through the game. So there may be great mechanics in there, but I've not found them, and I've not needed to use them either. But yeah, The Quiet Man comes off as an artistic experiment that utterly fails miserably. Whilst the FMV does look quite nice, it doesn't really break any new ground in terms of how it's used. The deaf mechanic is fine, but death and blind mechanics I've seen done better in almost every other experience so far. And the issue with this is that it feels like it's trying to make a point by taking things a step too far. And what I've seen since is that actually on its second week of release, The Quiet Man is going to get a new game plus where they're going to add in all the audio. And I kind of feel like, might actually play through it again just so that I can understand what the bloody hell was going on. Because I finished the game and I've still not got a clue. And I'm super confused by the whole thing. Would I recommend it? No. It's perverse. It's a perversely weird experience. I'm glad that it exists because I'm glad that like experimental games like this still happen. Because on paper, actually, I say this quite a lot. There's a good game in there somewhere, but the way how the brawling mechanics are put together, and the fact that the deaf mechanic is not put on a deaf person's terms, it's made worse. Almost like we're deaf and dumb, and deaf people are not dumb. And it's like we've held information from us on purpose. I hate that kind of stuff. And yeah, I was utterly disengaged by the end, yet strangely intrigued just to say that I'd got to the end of it. And that's not really why you should play a game. So I hope this ramble made sense, because The Quiet Man certainly doesn't. However, it's available out now. The deluxe edition is with 10% off wherever it is for the first 2 weeks, where you get on the PS4 version I got a dynamic theme which looked quite nice, and some avatars which I'll never use. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. This channel is just one of my many projects that cover games, music and film. If you enjoy any of these and would consider supporting me to develop further in the future, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Satorimon. Thank you for your time and for watching the video.